welcome to Stretch and Release. My name is Coach Wade. Today we're going to be doing a lot of myofascial release, specifically through the calf, hamstrings, glutes, but then putting a lot of focus and attention on the psoas. And we'll spend a lot of time going over exactly how to do that. But while I go through a few announcements, we're going to start with your softball or lacrosse ball, whichever one that you happen to have with you. Some of you may even be able to do a water bottle. That could work for you too. But I'll have you place that on the ground, and you're just going to have a seat, starting with that calf right on top. And then you can lift your butt off the ground to get a little more pressure on that calf. You can even cross your other leg over if you want to. You'll just find that balance is a little harder then. But go ahead and spend some time rolling out that calf, going all the way from your ankle up to your knee. And then if you find any tender spots through that calf, you can just keep a little bit of pressure on there. Try and just hold it steady. You can slowly move your foot back and forth, and that's going to massage your muscle over that foam roller, over that lacrosse ball, over that softball. And we're going to go calf, hamstrings, glutes, and then we'll do that other leg, calf, hamstrings, glutes, and then spend a little time going over the psoas. So if you're doing stretch and release today, you can email your favorite exercise to elena.wall@hfitcenter.com, and you'll get some credit for Fitnessland that has 2 weeks left. If you're still foam rolling that calf, feel free to move that up above the knee into the hamstring. So where you're looking for in the hamstring is usually about halfway up the leg. You should have that foam roller or that lacrosse ball, that softball, usually right around here. And the hamstrings is going to be the place where most of you feel the most tenderness, the most tension. You feel a very tender or tight spot there. On the hamstrings, what I like to do when you're rolling them out in that seated position is find that spot that feels a little bit tender, and then just rotate your leg back and forth a little bit. So pointing my toe to my right side, pointing my toe to the right side, and you're massaging that muscle back and forth over that tender spot. But for the most part, you're still just keeping it tender there, or keeping that ball in contact. You're not drastically rolling back and forth there. You're just massaging all over that hamstring from the knee all the way up to the hip. Typically somewhere in the middle is where you're going to feel that the most. After you've gotten a little bit on that hamstring, go ahead and move up to the glutes. Glutes, you're looking to start right here off to the side, and you'll just come up and down until you get towards the center. And then we'll stop at the center and then switch sides. So there's a few ways you can dig deeper into the glutes. If you feel like you have a lot of tenderness there, feel free to cross your leg over. You'll get into that glute medius just a little bit more. It can be very intense if you chose a softball over a lacrosse ball. So noticing that now, because I chose that softball. But you're welcome to do either or. Right now we're just kind of exploring those areas. You're doing a little bit of exploration through the calf, hamstrings, glutes, finding anywhere that you might feel tender, and you can come back to that later on today. Or feel free to click pause, spend a little extra time through the glutes, hamstrings, calves, wherever you need to. So that pause button's there for you. You can spend as long in this session as you want to. We're just kind of cruising through these areas right now for our 10 minutes. Once you finish that glute, come back to that other calf and switch sides. So looking for those tender spots. Usually if you find a spot like that, you want to spend about 20 seconds there. And you can kind of move your foot or your knee around a little bit and dig in there a little bit deeper. But what you're trying to do is you massage those muscles, is you're trying to, if you find any knots or any tender spots, you're trying to massage that out. It'll make you a little bit more flexible. It'll give you a little bit more power behind your jumps or your leg exercises that you're trying to do. And it's hopefully going to give you a little bit of relief too. You'll find that after we do all through the legs here, you'll actually be a little bit more flexible through your legs too. So once you finish that calf, up to that hamstring, coming up from the knee, up to your hip, and finding somewhere that might feel a little bit more tender. For me, it's kind of right in the middle, right below my glutes there. But it's a little bit different for everyone. So, and you might find that rolling on the outside of your hamstring and the inside of your hamstring, you'll have different areas where you're a little bit tight. Your hamstrings have 2 muscles there, one on the outside, one on the inside. So make sure you're paying attention to both of those. And then once you finish that hamstring, rolling up to your glutes, starting on the outside. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper in there, you can always cross that leg over and and spend a little bit of attention there. When you do cross that leg over, you should probably find that spot that digs into the gluteus medius the deepest. And it's kind of a 45-degree angle, not towards the center, not all the way towards the side, but more than likely you'll feel that area right there where you'll want to put a little extra attention. And again, if you want to pause and go over any of those areas in particular, especially if you happen to find more than one knot in your hamstrings or your glutes, you may want to just pause, take a minute or two, go through at your own pace. Today we're just cruising through those a little bit so that we can make a lot of time for the psoas, which we're going over next. So if you want to pause it, feel free now. Otherwise, we're hitting the psoas next. So with the psoas, you're going to find that by putting your finger on your belly button, going about 2 inches either direction to the side, and then you'll go about ½ an inch down. So it's typically somewhere right between in line with your belly button or a little bit below. You'll place the ball there, and then you'll lay down on the ground. This can be a very tender spot for a lot of people, so when you put that ball down there, you'll have that back leg straight, and you'll keep just a little bit of pressure and just start adding more and more pressure until you feel it right in there, dig it in pretty deep. You should feel where you're finding that psoas. If you feel like you found that tender spot, you don't want to add any more pressure, you can adjust the way that your leg is. So instead of moving your body back and forth, you can tilt your leg out and in, and you'll feel your abs and your hip flexors adjust for that. So feel free to adjust your leg there, but we're going to keep pressure on there for about 30 to 60 seconds. And it's at that belly button, 2 inches over, about ½ an inch down. Some of you might find 1 inch down. Some might just be straight across from the belly button. But we spent some time on the psoas a few weeks ago. We went over a stretch for it, and we had some more requests to go over the psoas. So the psoas is a culprit for a lot of back pain. You get it when you sleep on your side a lot, or if you sit kind of crooked in a chair, or you kind of drive off to the side, or you happen to always be leaning to the side, maybe talking to a friend. But give it another 10 seconds there, rolling out right by the stomach, and then switch sides. So belly button, 2 inches over, 1 inch down. If you feel a big tender spot there, that's probably the spot you're going to want to spend a little bit of time on. A softball might be too much. In that case, you can grab a lacrosse ball. You can grab even a tennis ball, can sometimes dig in there deep enough. But that psoas is kind of buried underneath, and it's a little bit harder to target. So a lot of times you'll want something pretty sturdy and pretty strong. Doing a foam roller, a lot of times doesn't quite get in there deep enough because that foam roller targets everything. And right now, the psoas is primarily in charge of bringing your knee up and then bending you to the side. So we're trying to kind of work out that hip flexor right there, and we're going to do some stretches later. They're going to be doing the opposite of that. We're going to be bringing that leg back and then bending you to the side, trying to stretch out that hip flexor. But once you finish that, go ahead and set the ball to the side, and we'll go through a couple stretches here, and we'll spend a little extra time on the psoas stretch. So our first 2 stretches are going to be the lizard pose and then a squat stretch. A lizard pose is going to have 1 foot forward. Your hands will be right next to that foot. And right now, you're stretching out your glutes. Everything on the side of that leg, you're stretching out your hip flexor on the opposite leg. And it's almost like you're holding a plank, but just with 1 foot back and 1 foot up. But to get that hip flexor stretched on the back leg, you want to set that knee down and kind of push your hips forward. And if you feel like you have a lot of flexibility, this isn't very challenging for you, you can drop down to your elbows and feel that get a little bit more intense. But for many of you, being on your hands here will definitely be enough. You'll want to focus on pushing your hips down, keeping your shoulders down and back. Don't let them start to round forward. And trying to stay strong and confident in this pose. And switch sides. So switching to that opposite side. And this lizard pose, it's one of my favorites for a lot of reasons. Go ahead and keep stretching that side. But in this pose, you're getting stretches all through the hips, both sides, hip flexors, glutes, hip abductors. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck in this one pose. You can strengthen the core here, you can stretch the core, but it's working on posture, it's working on alignment. And has a lot of bang for your buck in one pose. Give it about 2 more deep breaths here. And when you're ready, our next stretch is a squat stretch. And we'll do this one feet about shoulder width apart. They can be just a little wider if you want. Your toes can be anywhere from straight ahead to about 10 degrees out. And you'll come down deep into that squat. You can open up those legs just a little bit, doing an inner thigh stretch. A lot of people you'll see put their palms on the ground like this. That way they're getting even more bang for their buck. They're getting their forearms stretched out here. They're using those arms to still open up those legs to get the inner thigh. But go ahead and spend just a few seconds here, feeling those glutes. All those things we were working on earlier, rolling through the glutes, the calves, keeping your heels pressed down. And for just a little bit of hamstrings afterwards, go ahead and keep your hands on the ground. If you can keep your palms on the ground, awesome. And then just slowly lift up your hips. Feeling that all stretch through the hamstrings. Hold there for about 5, 4, 3, 2, and rest. So the psoas, which is our biggest focus today, like I said earlier, your psoas does 2 things in your body. It bends you to the side, and it lifts up that leg. So if we're going to do the opposite of that, that's going to help stretch the psoas. So right now you're going to have that leg behind. Instead of that psoas working and pulling up, you're going to have that leg behind, coming into a lunge, pushing your hips forward. You'll feel that big stretch through all of your hip flexors. But to focus a little extra on the psoas, you can put those arms up and bend to the side there. And hopefully you're feeling that same muscle right there that you were rolling out. If you're like me and you're doing that softball at start, it's probably a little bit tender. So lean into the side there. You'll feel that quite a bit. A couple more breaths. And rest. Go ahead and switch sides. Stepping that other leg forward. And this lunge stretch is great for all of your hip flexors, but that psoas has a tendency to cause a lot of issues. So right now we're targeting that one specifically. Right now I'm feeling all my hip flexors, my core is tight, pushing my hips forward, lifting my arms up, and then bending to the side, doing the exact opposites of what that muscle does. I'll give that a stretch for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. One more deep breath in. And exhaling out. And remember to email elena.wall@hfitcenter.com your favorite exercise that we did. You'll get some bonus points for Fitnessland, and it was great to have you guys. We'll be back next week focusing on a different muscle. If you have any requests, any problem areas, let me know. But great to have you. Hope you had fun.